Alright, what's going on YouTube? Hayden here. Today we're back with a brand new video. Today we have a different style video. We're going to be doing a little bit of a story documentary kind of style video. So yeah, if you like this video and like this style of video, make sure to hit the like button down below. Comment down below what kind of video I should do next. Hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell to know when I post videos on this channel. With all that said, let's hop right into the story. So Nick Chubb, the 23-year-old who's in his second year in the NFL, is absolutely lining up the NFL this year, leading the league in rushing yards, top 10 in rushing touchdowns. He's been a story this season, one of the better stories in the NFL this year. Browns might be a little bit underwhelming this year, but Nick Chubb has definitely been one of the better stories and is absolutely showing us that he might be the future of the Cleveland Browns franchise. Alright, so let's take it back to Chubb Town, which is located in Floyd County, Georgia, where it all began for Nick Chubb. So Chubb, known as Nicholas to his family, he originates from a historic family background. His name Nicholas comes from one of the 8 original Chubb brothers, better known as the King Chubbs to the Chubb family. The most famous Chubb brother would be John Henry Chubb, who was the one who founded Chubb Town way back in the 1850s and 1860s. There's much in the dark about this early Chubb brother history, as we don't really know how they were able to do what they did and create this historic town. The special part, better said by Nick Chubb himself, is that they came and settled and they were never slaves. Just thinking back to that time period in the 1860s, it's crazy to think about how they were able to do and able to achieve what the original Chubbs did. Nick Chubb has stated that he's known this story his whole life, and it's clear that these deep family roots were a key motivation while he was growing up and in his early football days, and even still today while he's playing in the NFL. Alright, so let's advance forward about 120 years or so. December 27th, 1995, the day that Nicholas Jamal Chubb was born in Cedar Town, Georgia. Early on in Chubb's life, at the age of 4 years old, his family went through a little bit of a hardship where his parents were split up, and this led to him primarily staying with his mother in Cedar Town, Georgia. But since this was a joint custody case, Nick was able to stay and have time with his father as well, and he would grow up with his father just about a minute away from Chubb Town. Nick attended Cedar Town High School, where he was a 2-sport athlete in football and track, and just being from this small town and just being a small town kid, his way of expressing himself was on the football field and through track and sports. The Chubb last name has the success written all over it, dating back to the original Chubbs as we were talking about in the 1860s, and also in football-wise, and football is a huge success in the Chubb family as well, as his dad played football at Valdosta State. His brother Zach was a defensive back at Air Force. His other brother Henry Chubb was a linebacker at Troy. His uncle Aaron played for Georgia in the 1980s. He was actually drafted to the Patriots. And we can't forget about his cousin Brandon Chubb, who was a linebacker for Wake Forest. And the most notable besides Nick probably would be Bradley Chubb, a former top 5 pick and the current outside linebacker for the Denver Broncos. So with all this deep family roots in football, it was just destined for Nick Chubb to be successful in the sport. And Nick Chubb bloomed into something more than just, he was more than special. This guy was a star. His junior season in high school, he rushed for 2,721 yards, which was top in the state of Georgia, where he also had 39 touchdowns. Then as a senior, he went on to rush for 2,690 yards and 38 touchdowns. With these impressive stats, this created much excitement for college coaches all around the country, and it's led to him getting 23 D1 offers and a 4- and 5-star ranking, just depending on what site you would look at. And even before his senior campaign was underway, he had committed to Mark Richt in the University of Georgia. And back around his time of commitment, Nick had stated in an article that Georgia is a place that he feels most comfortable, where he feels like he wants to raise his family and live the rest of his life. So it was noted on early that he was a Georgia boy full and through. He was going to go to the University of Georgia. And going into Georgia, Nick Chubb wasn't the only notable running back recruit from the 2014 class, as he was coming in along with another 5-star, Sony Michel, who was actually the higher rated back and the more notable back at the time of the commitment. And it was looking like it was going to be pretty hard for Nick Chubb to get on the football field in his freshman year, as he would be with Sony Michel, the new commitment, and there was also a guy you might know by the name of Todd Gurley on this roster, and Keith Marshall. Even though Keith Marshall was coming off an injury and he was in the early stages of rehab in Nick Chubb's freshman season, but Chubb came in early and had an impact in the first game of the season against number 16 Clemson. His first ever run, you could tell the guy was a star, and he was going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder all the time. The Georgia coaching staff knew that he was a tough physical runner coming in, and he showed that early. Chubb had steady playing time throughout the next 4 weeks of his freshman year behind Gurley, but he would really get his true shot at playing time against Missouri after Gurley had been given a 4-game suspension by the NCAA, and from then on out the rest of the year Nick Chubb showed that he was going to be a star for Georgia. He had one of his better games of the season against Arkansas where he rushed for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6.5 yards per carry, and then he would just make it look easy against Kentucky where he averaged 13.1 yards per carry on his 13 rushes for 170 yards. He would establish one of his signature runs against Auburn, just making broken tackles look way too easy. Georgia would go into their bowl game against Louisville, and Nick Chubb will be heading into that game with 7 straight starts with 100+ rushing yards and would probably have his best game of his freshman season. He took the expression "go out with a bang" to a new level where he set a school record for the most rushing yards in a bowl game with 266, and let's just not forget he averaged 8.1 yards per carry while getting 266 rushing yards. He would end his freshman campaign with 1,547 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, and was able to get all SEC first team honors and, of course, freshman of the year. And he did all of this and got all these accolades with only 8 starts, which is just mind-blowing as a freshman. Nick Chubb's sophomore year would get underway in 2015 against Louisiana Monroe, where he would rush on 16 attempts for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Would just get better and better. He went on in game number 2 against Vanderbilt for 189, and he was just lighting up the season. He had so much hype around his name coming into the year, and through 5 games he would have 747 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns on 8.1 yards per carry. He was that guy. He was the guy who was getting all the Heisman talk, and he would go into game number 6 against Tennessee, and devastation happened. Late in the first quarter in that Tennessee game, Nick Chubb would have a rush to the outside where when he landed out of bounds, he had just a gruesome injury that happened, a significant knee injury that some people are labeling that it could be a career-ending injury, something that he's going to have to really work and strive to get back on the football field for. God, that injury was it was horrific to watch that live. But of course, that would end his sophomore campaign early, and only 6 games in, all the Heisman talk would go down, of course, because he would not play another football game that season. But Nick Chubb would not stop working. He'd work super hard throughout the rest of his sophomore year, go into the off season, work really hard, rehab like crazy, and just work like that Chubb name represents, just hard work through and through. And that was what Nick Chubb was. He was super hardworking, super humble, and he found a way to get back onto the football field. Somehow, some way, Nick Chubb did it, and he would come out and shine in game number 1 of his junior campaign against North Carolina. He rushed for 222 yards on 32 attempts, 6.9 yards per carry for 2 touchdowns. He looked like he was definitely back and definitely full and recovered from his injury. But throughout the rest of that junior campaign, he wouldn't look like himself. He would have 4 more 100+ yard rushing games. He would still finish the year with 1,130 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, but he was only doing it on 5 yards per carry. He just didn't look like his regular self. He didn't look like the Heisman Nick Chubb from the season prior, and you could tell that ACL injury was definitely holding him back a little bit. Chubb's senior campaign would kick off against App State in 2017, where he would rush for 96 yards on 2 touchdowns. In 2017, Georgia was having a special season, so Nick Chubb was splitting carries with Sonny Michel, while they would both end up being 1,000-yard rushers in the 2017 year. And also, Georgia was just routing through competition throughout the whole entire season, where they were blowing out everybody. So Chubb barely got fourth quarter snaps, hence why his stats might not have been eye-popping to some people. Week in and week out, Nick Chubb was putting up silent numbers and getting work done for Georgia, as they would finish the regular season and go on into the SEC championship and play Auburn, where they would beat them, and that would end up giving Georgia a berth to the playoffs, where they would open it up against Oklahoma, where Chubb probably had his best game of the year and one of his better games of his career. Georgia went into halftime of that game down, and Nick Chubb and his partner Sonny Michel brought them back. A historic comeback against Oklahoma, and a Rose Bowl that would definitely go down in the books as one of the best to ever happen. Nick Chubb would finish the Oklahoma game with 145 rushing yards on 10.4 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, Nick Chubb's career would end in heartbreak. They would end up losing to Alabama in the national championship in heartbreaking fashion with a walk-off touchdown in overtime, where they would lose 26-23. Chubb finished that year with 223 rushing attempts, 1,345 rushing yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, and he would finally get himself an All-American honor, where he finished as a second-team All-American. He would also go down in SEC history as the second all-time rushing yards leader behind Herschel Walker. He's about 500 yards behind Herschel Walker, so he probably would have been number 1, not for that horrible injury in his sophomore year, and he probably could have also walked away with the Heisman Trophy the way that season was going. But yeah, Nick Chubb would finish his college career at Georgia with 758 rushing attempts, 4,769 rushing yards, and 44 rushing touchdowns on 6.3 yards per carry. Going into the 2018 NFL Draft, Nick Chubb was definitely one of the top 5 running backs in the draft class that year. He was slotted anywhere from being a late first round pick into the second round, early second round, something like that. He would end up being the 4th running back taken in the draft in the second round by the Cleveland Browns, pick number 35. The Browns had some excitement coming into that season where they drafted Baker Mayfield as well in that same draft class, and they would end up finishing the 2018 year 7-8-1, proving much excitement to go on into the 2019 year. Nick Chubb would get 9 starts in his rookie season, where he would get 996 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, and he also had 20 catches out of the backfield for 149 and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, the Browns were looking like they were turning the ship around a little bit. So coming into the 2019 year, Nick Chubb's second year in the NFL, it was looking bright for Nick, as he looked like he was the guy. He was the #1 running back on the depth chart, and the Browns had a lot of hype coming into the season. They've been pretty underwhelming at the time of this recording. They were 6-7 through 13 games. The one person who hasn't been underwhelming would be Nick Chubb, who is leading the NFL in rushing yards to this point with 1,281 through 13 games on 253 attempts, with 7 rushing touchdowns to go along with all of that. Right now, the Browns' playoff hopes are slim, but they're still alive, so we'll see what they can do with that. Nick Chubb's looking like he's in line for maybe a couple awards this season at the end of it all. And it looks like the Browns probably have their running back for the future. I think he can be the future of this Browns franchise, the guy who can save it for them along with Baker Mayfield at the helm. So yeah, let's see what they can do going forward. Hoping the best for Nick Chubb, forever and always a dog. So yeah, that's the story of Nick Chubb. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of style of video. It's something new, trying something different here. If you did enjoy, drop a like on the video, comment down below what you thought. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Hit the post notification bell to know when I post content on the channel. With that said, that's been a Nick Chubb story, the future of the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, it's been Hayden. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, everybody.